In this episode of the Cole Memo, clap, 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 my guest is calling from Texas. How's it going, Austin?
Going on, Cole? It's good to be with you again, man.
Yeah, and do you mind reintroducing yourself and telling my audience where they can find you online?
Yes, I am the executive director of the Texas Cannabis Collective. We're a 501c4 nonprofit here in Texas based on, uh, we focus on breaking news, relevant news, grassroots advocacy, outreach, and premier events. We've done a lot of big events over the years here in Texas. So um, I do that kind of at night, and during the day I actually work for a doctor, one of the only doctor owned cannabis stores here in the state of Texas. We're unique in that we're one of the top prescribers for medicinal cannabis in the state of Texas, and we're also on the other side of the shop. We sell hemp compliant products in the state of Texas. So we have a pretty big clientele base here in Fort Worth, and in fact, I ship all over the country, believe it or not, even to places like Springfield and Chicago. So uh,
That's awesome.
you can find me. You can find us at our website is txcannaco.com. But you can really we really have most of our presence online. You can find us at TX Canico on Twitter and on Instagram at TX Cannabis Collective. Those are the best places to really like find what we're doing. We really utilize social media um, as a way to really engage the public. So
Awesome. And just yeah, a brief reminder for maybe folks that are not aware of how things stand in Texas. Just briefly remind listeners like what cannabis policy looks like right now in Texas. What are your options for access?
from so
Like from
Texas still technically Texas marijuana is still illegal from a recreational standpoint, and that can mean possession of flower under 4 ounces is a misdemeanor. Anything over 4 ounces is a state jail felony, and any amount of concentrate, whether it's edible form, vaporizer, uh, wax, things like that. That is an automatic felony for any amount. And when they go to weigh that, they don't just weigh the amount that they suspect or that they're charging you with. They weigh the whole product, right? So if you have a bag full of like weed brownies, that they're gonna weigh the entire bag of weed brownies, and that's the possession charge that you get. So there's there's still people who are catching charges for you know going to New Mexico and then coming back into Texas, um, and catching felony charges for a vape pen. You know what I'm saying? So that is the state law. Now we do have what is called the compassionate use program. It's our medical marijuana program. It's run by the Department of Public Safety. That's our top law enforcement agency out here. Why a medical marijuana program is being run by a law enforcement agency, and that's Texas. That's what makes it unique, I guess. But it's one of the most restrictive programs in the country, and that's self-admitted by the consultation work that has been done by Weeds LLC, a New Mexico organization that DPS had called in. It's self-admitted that DPS is not doing a very good job. It's one of the most restrictive programs in the country for patients, for prescribers. It's not business friendly. It's wickedly expensive, and it's almost non-functioning. A state of almost 30 million plus people, and add 100,000 to that every month that's moving to Texas. It seems like, uh, we only have 60,000 registered patients, and I would say probably less than 10,000 of those are active. I would say active patients. So incredibly lacking on the medical side. However, um, the legal hemp industry has been I'm talking I wild, wild west, like it's going to be the golden era of cannabis in Texas because it is the most, where we talk about the most restrictive program in the country from a medical standpoint. I would argue that Texas is the most deregulated hemp industry in the entire country, and like anything flies out here. And it's being run by the regulatory compliance for here is Department of State Health Services, and the Department of Agriculture. Neither one of them get state funding, and so I think that the state health services inspectors there's like 5 or 6 of them, maybe 7 of them over the entire state of Texas, and they admitted in May that they can only like get to about every single shop in the state once every like 3 or 4 years. And there's more shops and things being that are growing. It's crazy what's happening with the hemp industry, and it's being pretty pretty I would say it's being utilized in a pretty genius way. There's a lot of what you already probably know about THCA flower.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
smoking on some right now.
yeah, man, it's everywhere here now. It's not good. A lot of it's not good quality,
Mm.
but there's a ton of it out here right now, and um, it's selling like crazy. And the drinks, the hemp derived drinks, those are being sold openly in our biggest liquor stores. Our massive like liquor, like Walmart size liquor stores are selling, like they've got 5 shelves deep full of
Hell
THC.
yeah.
It's crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what's kind of what the state of Texas looks like at the moment.
That's interesting. Well, quick shout out. I flashed this THCA flower up. It's from a local Illinois grower. If you want to try it out, sundrenchedfarm.com. And I'm also cracking open, speaking of hemp beverages, cracking open a River Bluff Punch Pop, one of my favorites. They're 50 milligrams a can, so they pack a pretty heavy punch, but they do have lower dosed sodas and edibles if that's your thing. Just go to riverbluffcollective.com and yeah, the cool thing about hemp is just getting this stuff shipped to your door and I can buy as much as I want. Like it's not something you can do at the legal dispensaries here in Illinois or in most states. So it's really cool. And maybe to segue us into, I want to give you some space. Any thoughts on what I just said before we segue to Texas?
No, well, I'll tell you this, because where we are located in Fort Worth, my shop, we're in very close proximity to downtown where the convention center is. So we have, conventions from that bring people in from all across the country. So I get a ton of people from Illinois. And when they come into my shop and they only see 8.25% sales tax, they like their eyes light up and they're like, how much can I buy? And I'm like, you can buy the whole store if you want to. And they're like almost like convulse and shake because they
Right.
and then they tell me about Illinois' tax structure, and I'm like, oh my god, like you poor people, I feel so bad for you.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not even like the taxes are definitely salt in the wound, but the prices are just high in general, and it's all by design. And in fact, just today, the Cannabis Business Association of Illinois, who represents all the big companies who dominate this market, released a press release saying that, hemp derived products should be bad because they're competition to the licensees. And it's like, buck up or shut up, buddy. Like, let's go. Like it's interesting because like it seems like the only element that I've ever seen anybody complain about prices dropping is in weed. Like usually, like if you drive by the gas station and you see like low prices, you're like, yes. I'm not saying I've ever heard a consumer bitch about cheap weed, by the way. It's always the cannabis people that are trying to make money off of weed that are bitching about cheap weed. It's like, nah, that's just the way it goes. Let it go, you know. Anyways, though, I digress. So to kick it over to Texas, that's really funny to hear that Illinoisans have come in and have been like blown away at the freedom in Texas, because not that Texas doesn't tend to embrace and talk about how much they like freedom, but like you said, marijuana is very much illegal there, but hemp just seems to be pervasive into that end. Maybe to segue us to local news, I think a good place to start here, correct me if I'm wrong, I'll try to do some Googling while you correct me if I'm wrong. Um, Dallas just decriminalized 4 ounces of cannabis, which is, by the way, more than what Illinois did, way more than what Illinois did. They only did 30 grams for in-state people, 15 grams, half of everything for out-of-state people. So, 15 grams of flour, which is ridiculous. Dallas does 4 ounces. Not only do they do that, and this is the part that I think that you may have to correct me on, they made it so that the local police department can't determine, like they can't take something and be like, oh yes, this is marijuana, or oh yes, this is hemp. Like they just have to take a hands-off approach to cannabis.
Absolutely. And one of the other big important keys is law enforcement can't use smell as probable cause. So that's a big win.
Wow. See, in Illinois, it's legal and we still haven't gotten that.
Yeah. So in what the as far as testing goes, that's what was has been eliminated. The city is allowed to use $0 on testing uh, evidence to find out if it's legal hemp compliant product or quote unquote marijuana. And one more little sub note that is part of the charter amendment, and that is that if for some reason the state brings litigation, which Attorney General Ken Paxton has done to 5 other cities, is that there's a mechanism that goes in place that if the state for some reason overrides or creates some legislation that overrides the local ordinance, then cannabis possession of 4 ounces or less becomes the lowest level priority item on law enforcement and its budget, right? So like even jaywalking becomes more, more of a priority than cannabis possession. So we really like, big shout out to Ground Game Texas, who's the progressive organization who led the campaign. They've led the campaign in Austin and have played back in support on a lot of other initiatives across the state. And so we've just been proud to be able to like team up with those guys. And while they are a progressive organization that handles a lot of issues, cannabis is just one of them. That's what we do full time. Me and my organization, we focus on it full time. We're looking at it from every angle. We're working with different partners, progressive and conservative, and everybody in between. So uh, but all of these measures have been done in some kind of progressive fashion. And Dallas was a big win, and not just the city of Dallas, but the city of Lockhart and the city of Bastrop. And those are for anybody who's not familiar with Texas. Texas is a big state, but those are two cities within the Texas Triangle that are actually about 3 hours from Dallas. Lockhart is in Hayes County, and I'm sorry, Lockhart is in Caldwell County, and I believe Bastrop is in Hayes. It's either on the edge of Travis County or it's on the edge of Hayes County. So those are communities that are actually much closer to Austin and San Antonio than Dallas. So it's really a testament that like we did this 2 years ago in 2022 with those were kind of shocking results. The city of Denton, city of Killeen, city of San Marcos, these are all along the I-35 corridor, and they're hundreds of miles apart from each other. And then now 2 years later, we've done a seismic city, if you will, in not only the state but really in the country. Dallas is one of the biggest cities in the country that has one of the most progressive cannabis decriminalization city charter amendments. Now it's not even an ordinance; it's like a part of the city, like fabric, if you will. And this was voted on at 68%. Um, you don't get number. That's way more than President Trump got in either of his elections in the state of Texas. And that's more than Joe Biden or President Obama got.
If
Uh,
Amendment 3 would have gotten that in Florida, it would be a part of law now in Florida, but
yeah,
it didn't pass the 60% threshold even. So
yeah, was kind of. I mean, I'm always in support of every piece of legislation that proactively tries to move the needle and make changes. But I'll be honest with you, it's kind of fun dunking on Florida a little bit. Texas, we're always so, everybody, our expectation is very low for most people. So the fact that we were the ones that really got something done and Florida was unable to achieve success, that low key, big state to big state, that's always kind of fun.
yeah, yeah. Like you say, I would have taken, I mean, I was not a supporter of Amendment 3, but I always told everybody that debated me on it because I had a lot of supporters of Amendment 3 on the show that it's not that I wouldn't take it if it were the only option. It just, I think there are better ways to like actually legalize it, including home grow. Like you have to have home grow. You can't say that you're gonna add that later. You have to add it first, you know?
Yeah, Amendment 3 had a lot of hype around it. And the fact that it came from a lot of big corporate money, I think was a little bit of a turn off. It still got more votes than President Trump did.
Yeah,
It's not like it like lost. It just didn't reach the 60% threshold. And
right.
but what we're finding is here in Texas on this issue, especially in our very major urban areas, it is wildly progressive. Dallas, uh, the reason it didn't pass in San Antonio, a similar measure called the Justice Charter, was put to a vote in San Antonio, but it had other language in it that would have banned like no knock raids. It would have banned, it would have protected, had abortion rights and stuff like that. And so it had like a whole bunch of like other progressive language tied to it, as opposed to being just a standalone decriminalization bill or proposition. And because of that, it lost pretty big. And then in the other case where we lost was in Lubbock earlier this year in May 5th, earlier this year. We lost the same progressive type proposition, Prop A. Um, it lost, but you got to think Lubbock that was like us kind of marching into the heart of the beast and trying to like slay the dragon in its own lair. You know what I'm saying? Where it's most powerful. So it was the fact that we even got it on the ballot in Lubbock, that we gathered about 11,000 signatures in the city of Lubbock to put it on. That was a miracle in and of itself. That was a testament of everything. And we still ended up getting 34%. We lost that one 34% to 66%. Mind you, we were outraised. I think we had $8,000 raised for that campaign over the total calendar year of the campaign. The opposition group came in 6 weeks before the election, big religious opposition group, and dumped $185,000 on the against campaign. You had all the churches in the mega churches in Lubbock, Texas, preaching out against it. So we lost 66-34, but let me tell you why that's a win. Two reasons. The amount of money that they spent on that election, $185,000. They were anticipating that vote being like 85, 87%. No, the fact that we got 34% really actually was a loss for them. They didn't realize, oh, that's a whole like third of the public that supports that. And not only that, but it like there's clearly a lot of crossover from conservatives in Lubbock that jumped onto that. So that was win number one. Win number two, their president that these guys religiously are devoted to in Lubbock, Texas, came out with his language in favor of Amendment 3 and has his words all over decriminalizing it. So now all of a sudden in Lubbock, Texas, that's a really good idea. And if Matt Gaetz becomes Attorney General of the United States, all of a sudden it's going to become a really good idea for Lubbock, Texas. So while we might have lost the battle in that election, let me tell you, we are absolutely winning the war in Texas, hands down.
Yeah, I remember kind of a few years ago when I would tune into some of your spaces, just listening. Um, every once in a while, when I had the opportunity, I would try to make you and others laugh, you know, kind of to give you energy, but also kind of to just poke at Texas, like you were saying with Florida earlier. I can't remember how I'd say it, but I said it last time on the podcast too. Like, oh, you're really doing it big in Texas, aren't you? But no, now you are. Like you've like I said, especially the Dallas thing, that is huge progress, massive progress. Like I think that's I don't even know. That's monumental.
Well, now so let's carry that. What does that look like? What does the big wins in these cities look like coming up in our upcoming legislature, right? Again, recap. Let me tell you, the Texas legislature meets once every 2 years for approximately 140 days, so about 5 months, and that's to carry on all the issues of one of the biggest states in the country. And there's a lot of competing politics at the legislature. Forget that it's dominated by Republicans. Um, it's a big legislature. You often have a lot of fighting between the House and the Senate at the legislature. So there's that dynamic. And then you also have urban versus rural like battles at the legislature. And so you have these three like competing dynamics um, that have to all be resolved in a matter of 5 months. And for the first month, nobody's doing anything, like still trying to find their office, still trying to all of that stuff, getting email addresses and stuff like that. So like nothing gets done the first month. We have been getting bills pre-filed. So when we talk about these measures in Dallas and Austin and Lockhart and all these places, these are very progressive measures, right? Eliminating smell for probable cause, 4 ounces. That's a QP, right? Like that's a large amount of bud.
No, it's a small amount.
I mean, yeah.
I'm just trying to be funny. There was a headline though. It said, there were areas in Texas that voted to decriminalize small amounts. I was like, yes, let's do that headline. Let's call it small amounts.
I mean,
Let's
it could,
normalize those amounts, you
that's
know?
a that's a that's a usable amount over a period of time, right?
Yeah.
So,
It's a trip back
uh,
from the equivalent of Sam's Club.
yeah,
You should be able to travel with that amount. No problem.
like if I go buy 4 bottles of vodka, right? Like that clearly I'm not going to use that in one single setting, but I might over like a period of 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, who knows? You know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
my right.
Whenever we have a get together, I go and buy like 30 packs of like different types of beers, and I definitely only drink like two of them.
Right.
And
So
all of them go to my friends and family, you know?
yeah, these maximum purchase limits are pretty ridiculous,
Absolutely.
and so to continue,
Sorry. Yeah.
no, the what we've done at these local city levels is really progressive, super progressive. Um, that that energy is likely to be unmatched at the legislature simply from the conservative domination that exists in the state of Texas, and even more dominant now uh, because of all of the big wins for Republicans nationwide and even for the state of Texas. Um, and so what we've been what has been voted on by like super majorities in local municipalities, what we're probably going to get at the legislature is like a small fraction of that. I think right now for us, one of the most realistic bills out there is Representative Joe Moody's bill, HB 848, and it effectively takes and so we were talking about progressive, right? This is about as progressive as we can get at this legislature. Is taking um, possession of concentrates. Remember how we discussed that earlier? Concentrates under 20 grams of concentrate, and making that, instead of making that an automatic felony for any amount under 20 grams, is a misdemeanor. And depending on, between 0 and 10 grams is a class B misdemeanor, and between 10 and 20 grams is a class A misdemeanor. So I think I'm paraphrasing on that bill. I don't have the exact language right in front of me, but that is kind of the big drop off that we have from what people are saying they want at the local level. And you can see this in public polling, and you can now see it in the urban vote and the city vote. Versus at the legislature, it's like breadcrumbs. You know what I'm saying? We're like crawling to like just stop the bleeding. And so it's going to be a challenge. Obviously, we don't even know who the Speaker of the House is potentially going to be. There's already kind of a bit of a civil war, a lot of fallout from the Ken Paxton impeachment trial last year.
Yeah, I heard that guy was like I had only heard of him because of like you, I think, and just like my general awareness of his opposition of cannabis. But then I heard he like stole a fountain pen or something, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy?
He's the worst.
I
um,
didn't know he got impeached.
Well, but here's the funny thing is he got impeached and almost removed.
Hmm.
And there was a little bit of time here after the President Trump win that he might be U.S. Attorney General. And if that was the case, we were in a lot of trouble. I'm talking like I was gonna like take my hat off, my glasses, and be like sit people down, and be like, well, look,
Yeah, it's like
fucking trouble,
as
y'all.
worse as bad as Jeff Sessions, right?
And that's why I alluded to that. Like, back in 2016, that was like getting the worst guy for cannabis policy, and to kind of, I guess, be poetic, his big thing is that he rescinded the Cole memo, right? And here we are.
Yep. Yeah,
had, had to get the name in the podcast, right?
I
Had to
appreciate it.
bring it all back,
Yeah.
make it relevant. So, but now if Ken Paxton had been selected, yes, it would have been far worse. We're talking about a guy who litigated a ban on smokable hemp products all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I don't want to say he didn't lose. I mean, they did. They didn't get the verdict that they wanted. They got scraps of what they were actually looking for, and all it did was hurt Texas, manufacturers, Texas businesses. So we're talking about a guy who is suing. He's spending public money to sue cities that have decriminalized cannabis, that are actually saving resources, and all for publicity stuff. Like this guy is. And had he become U.S. Attorney General, I think you would have had, a lot to be worried about from federal movement. What that looks like now with potential Matt Gaetz is like literally the complete opposite of what Ken Paxton would have been. So, that's kind of where we sit at in Texas. There's maybe a medical bill, some expansion that happens at the medical side. They're absolutely certainly coming for the hemp cannabinoid market. The lieutenant governor has made it no secret. In fact, I've already kind of know a couple of ban bills that are being drafted. I haven't looked today yet to see if they've been pre-filed, but word has it that the lieutenant governor is going to be very preemptive and quick on this issue. It never happens that way. All cannabis legislation starts in the House and moves up and dies in the Senate, right? Even like things like a ban or something like that. It rarely happens where it starts off in the Senate early in the session and then like pops over to the House. That would be unprecedented, if you will, but that's actually kind of what it sounds like is going to kind of play out here, and then it's going to be in the House's, the House's ball court of what they do with that. And that really depends on who the speaker is. If it's Dade Phelan, who was the speaker last year, he's shown a lot of resistance towards the Senate. And so that would be in our favor. If it's somebody else who's more acquiescent to the lieutenant governor in the Senate and their demands, then we could be in some trouble from a hemp derived side. But we don't even, there's kind of, like I said, there's a kind of a civil war going on in the Texas House. So we don't know who it's going to be, or how the Democrats going to get utilized into this, because that's the current speaker. All the Republicans want to oust him, but they don't have like a majority without all of the Republicans. He still has probably like 10 to 15 holdouts. And if all of the Democrats vote in favor of him with this like little small group of Republicans, then he becomes the House Speaker, right? But he's purely done it on working with Democrats, and that's what these guys on the far right like really hate. So they want a really far right speaker, but they can't really get him, that guy, without this like mid-tier group of pretty reasonable Republicans. So that's kind of where we sit as far as legislation goes, what 2025 kind of looks like. Let's see what the federal farm bill does. Let's see what rescheduling does. Let's see. Let's just get to like Thanksgiving and see what happens. It feels like,
Yeah.
yeah, something
Gosh.
is like changing so rapidly. I can't keep up with it.
Straight up, straight up. Well, hey, we'll close here. I know we're at the top of our time. I just wanted to say, something that I would encourage, people in Texas to check out, but all over the nation is House Bill 5903, Illinois House Bill 5903. We recently recorded an episode with the Illinois Hemp Growers Association, and they helped to craft this legislation. It's very short, very to the point, and it basically just codifies the Farm Bill and applies any mislabeled products, like if you don't label them appropriately, then the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act is applied. Like we already have mechanisms to deal with mislabeled products, so let's use those federally mandate. We don't need to create new criminal
Right.
penalties. Let's just do that. It also creates an age gate for any ingestibles or smokables. Um, and like I
That
said, with the labeling, you need testing. So it mandates testing. And that's all we need to do is just make sure that, adults can get it responsibly and consume it responsibly, know what they're taking. And that's honestly issue if you're going to call it an issue, that's how you solve it, I feel.
It doesn't have to be that hard. It
Right.
really does. And you're right. It feels like a lot of times people are trying to reinvent the wheel, and it's not. It doesn't have to be that hard. And at some point, I see us kind of the hemp and marijuana markets merging into one, or at least merging in under one umbrella. Um, and so I this idea that the two forces are going to be competing against each other for longer than anywhere between 5 and 10 years, I think, is a misstep. It's all cannabis sativa. It's all going to at some point get regulated as uh, one piece of
One plant.
one plant. Yeah, it's one consumer good.
Sure.
There's different applications, but um,
Because it really is silly when it comes down to it. Like cannabis, like you said, is the botanical term. Then you've got the two legal terms, marijuana and hemp. And it's like, I just love hemp because it's like the Trojan horse to descheduled cannabis, right? It's like, oh, okay. So if we call it hemp, I can
right.
just And I don't know why some people don't like see that. It doesn't have to be a war, you know? And like you say, I do believe that there's going to become a day. I think more and more people are seeing the light. Even some of these huge cannabis companies I alluded to earlier are getting involved in hemp because they see the benefits, you know? So,
I joke because there's a particular legislator, I won't say his name, but there's a particular legislator in Texas who like is adamant, he'll pound his, we will never legalize marijuana. We will never do it. But like then you start talking about hemp, and this guy's like, oh man, hemp is so great that this new market, this guy's making so much money, and like man, these products are crazy, and like it's it all we did was just change the vernacular, like the lingo, and just kind of flipped it, and all of a sudden it's palatable to almost most of the public. Does that have some racial undertones to it? Probably. I mean,
right.
yes, look historically. But like, yeah, man, it just kind of we just kind of needed to clean up some of the language and present it in the right way. And now that that's being done, I mean, I can't even understate how much having this access to people in just my community in Fort Worth, how much it means to a lot of people. It's pretty crazy. And now we just got to protect it, right? Like the lieutenant governor wants to make it all go away. I guess in the state of Illinois, there are factions there that want it to all go away. And so we just need to figure out a way to protect consumers, protect patients, give us our home grow. If we just stop arresting people and allow people to grow it at home, that solves like 90 to 95% of the issues. Uh,
Bingo.
and then just a little bit of light regulation, age gating, some license, some, you know, low cost licensing. It's
Yeah.
not really not that hard.
Right.
Uh, but what I know, I'm just a weed dealer. So
Yeah, really quick thought, just because I thought it was notable what you said. I think one of the things that makes hemp so palatable is the fact that it can be sold through normal retail channels. And like when you even like I have I'm kind of outing one of my aunt and uncles, I guess, right now. They went to Colorado and they had never like they didn't smoke often, but they're like, ooh, it's Colorado. But you have to find a dispensary, and it's pretty easy to find one in Colorado, especially in Illinois. But the fact that you can't just like go to a liquor store. So, I mean, now you can, as you just described in Texas, now you can. And I think that's what it makes it not seem like so bad. You know what I mean? If you can just go
right.
pick it up at the gas station or something like that.
And what helps us is that we're like hyper focalized on cannabis, THC, CBD, um, those basic like compounds. We don't get too crazy with all of the like these radical like isomerized cannabinoids that like delta XYZ. Uh,
Yeah. And by the way, that testing thing we talked about earlier will hopefully weed that out, by requiring GMP standards. Because that's a big concern. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't mean to cut you off. But
no, um, you know, people come in just like they would go to like a liquor shop. You're 21, you're all good to go, and no purchasing limits. Um, you know, there's no guard standing up front, like making sure that vigorously inspecting your ID and all that kind of thing. We have credit card processing. Nothing has to be operated all cash. So we've proven that we can do nice things, and it's really day by day revolutionizing, the attitudes around cannabis, and that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to change hearts and minds, and as long as we keep doing what we're doing, having the conversations, educating ourselves, because guys like me and you, we talk about weed all day, every day. We're highly educated. We're highly connected. No pun intended here. But like, you know, even guys like us can use the education, can always go back and like, learn more. In fact, that's, I think, what makes us, you know, great at what we do is that like that's the foundation for us is there anybody that comes into the tell anybody that comes at me acting like they know everything there is to know about cannabis, that already is the red flag that, bro, you probably don't know as much as you think you know,
Right.
because this is highly nuanced. There are so many different expertises, whether it's policy, industry, culture, like whatever it is. Um, there's always something that's changing or new to learn or is developing or emerging. And if you're not willing to continue to like learn and educate yourself, you're gonna get left behind. It's just it is what it is. And so and that's okay. We're gonna keep plodding along, and just I really appreciate you having me here, Cole. It's always good to talk to experts in the other states and compare notes and talk about. For me, I love to talk about my state. Sometimes it drives me mad the way this plant is treated here. But at the same time, all the hard work that we've done over the last 10 years is now it feels like starting to like really move forward. And one of these days, we're going to come back and do a podcast and laugh at all of the bullshit that we went through for the kids. You know what I'm saying? These kids these days, they'll never know. So,
No, they won't. They won't. Hopefully, yeah, we'll plant trees that the kids can, sit in the shade. We know that whole saying, whatever. I fucked it up. But yeah, on that note, I agree. Thank you for the kind words, and I always appreciate my conversations with you. We'll have to make it happen sometime if it's not in Texas, maybe in Illinois, or maybe in Washington, D.C. Who knows? We may have to go there. But
yeah, I'm
you
ready.
know, yeah. So, anyways, I look forward to sharing a joint with you or our next conversation, whichever comes first. So, thanks, Austin.
Pleasure.